everyone, B here, and today I thought that we would do something a little bit different from my past videos. And instead of talking about a creepy cryptid or scary story, we are going to be discussing a true crime story that happened in Copper, Oregon back in the early 1970s. This story is about the Cowden family murders. Now, I will go ahead and warn you guys that the information in this video is upsetting and involves the murder of a whole family, including young children. So if this kind of topic upsets or triggers you, you might want to go ahead and skip this video and wait until next week for another one of my creepy stories. Now, like I said, these murders happened in the city of Copper, Oregon, which is about 40 miles south of Medford, Oregon. The members of the Cowden family consisted of the mother and father, Belinda, 22 years old, and Richard Cowden, 28 years old, as well as their two children, David, 5 years old, and Melissa, 5 months old, and their dog Droopy. The family enjoyed outdoor activities such as camping, hiking, and just being outdoors in nature. The Cowden family lived in White City, Oregon, and Richard Cowden worked as a logging truck driver. On August 30th, 1974, the Cowden family packed up their camping supplies into Richard's 1956 Ford pickup truck and headed to the Carberry Creek area near Copper, Oregon, in the Siskiyou Mountains for a weekend camping trip. On Sunday, September 1st, 1974, at around 9 a.m., Richard and David Cowden traveled on foot to the Copper General Store to buy some milk. After purchasing the milk, Richard and David traveled back to their campsite where Belinda and Melissa were waiting for them. That was the last sighting of the Cowden family. That very night, Belinda's mother, who was expecting the family to come over for dinner on their way home, since she only lived about a mile from the campground, started to get worried when the family did not arrive in time for dinner. She then decided to drive over to the campground to see if they were okay. When Belinda's mother arrived at the campground, she noticed that the family was nowhere to be seen, and Richard's truck was still parked next to their site. The truck's keys were located on the picnic table, and Belinda's purse was found on the table too, along with a plastic dishpan full of cold water. The Cowden's camp stove was completely set up for use, and Melissa's diaper bag was also found on the table nearby, along with an opened carton of milk. Belinda's mother also found that Richard had left his expensive watch and his wallet on the ground. The family's truck contained all the family's clothing aside from their bathing suits. After looking for the family and waiting around an hour for them to return to the campsite, the grandmother left the campground to go contact authorities about them going missing. The local sheriff, troopers, and the Oregon State Police arrived at the scene later on and started to investigate the area for the missing family members. They searched until dark, and then Lieutenant Mark Kazar, who was heading the investigation, stated that the search would be delayed for about a day because the case lacked any information leading to the idea that something violent had happened at the campsite. The very next morning, the family's dog Droopy was discovered scratching on the Copper General Store door. The search for the Cowden family was one of the largest searches in Oregon's history, and the search included local and state police, the United States Forest Service, Explorer Scouts, and the Oregon National Guard, as well as a very large number of volunteers. Over 25 miles of roads and trails near the campground were thoroughly searched while looking for the Cowden family, and the investigators also used planes and helicopters equipped with infrared imaging in order to search for them from above. Unfortunately, all the effort and resources used by the authorities did not locate the missing family members, and the only bit of evidence was the family's dog that was located the day after the family went missing. The search for the missing family was eventually suspended on September 7, 1974, but the Cowden family members and friends continued to search for them. Authorities started to look into the family's financial situation, such as if they owed any substantial money to anyone or if they were getting harassed by anybody, but they were unable to find anything that would lead the authorities to a motive. The authorities were trying to figure out if the family was involved in a robbery gone wrong or some other type of attack, but because Richard's wallet and expensive watch was found on the ground at the campsite, that motive idea was quickly removed. 7 months later, after the Cowden family went missing, 2 gold prospectors were hiking through the woods near Carberry Creek in Copper, Oregon, when they came upon the body of Richard Cowden. Richard's body had been tied to a tree on a steep slope and was severely decomposed. The location of the body was about 7 miles from the campground where the family went missing 7 months earlier. Near the decomposing body of Richard, the 2 prospectors found a small cave where unfortunately they located the body of Belinda Cowden and the 2 children Melissa and David. The opening of the small cave had been covered with rocks in order to try and hide the 3 bodies inside. Eventually, all 4 bodies were identified via dental records as the 4 missing Cowden family members. Later on, autopsies were conducted on the family members, and the records showed that Belinda and David had died from a gunshot wound from a .22 caliber bullet, while Melissa had died from severe head trauma. Because of the level of decomposition of Richard's body, authorities were unable to determine what he had died from. Ideas of what happened to the Cowden family started to stir, and some thought that maybe Richard had murdered his own family and then taken his own life afterwards. However, no gun was ever found near Richard's body, so this theory was quickly removed. Lieutenant Mark Kezar stated that, quote, "The whole nature of the thing smacks of a weirdo," unquote. He also added that the police knew more about the case than they let on to the public. The most plausible explanation that the police could come up with in regard to the murders was that Richard and David must have returned from the general store with the milk that they had purchased, and then the whole family decided to go swimming in Carberry Creek. Then it was thought that around noon the family was eventually abducted at gunpoint while out swimming by someone they did not know. Lieutenant Kezar theorized that the abductor then drove the family a short distance away from the campsite, and they were forced up to the small cave where Belinda, David, and Melissa were then murdered and then hidden inside the tiny cave. Afterwards, Richard was tied to a tree nearby, and then he was murdered. A different family from Los Angeles, California, who arrived at the same campground as the Cowdens on September 1st, 1974, went for a short walk once they had arrived at the campground. On their walk, they happened to notice 2 men and a woman sitting in a truck nearby acting suspiciously. The family stated that the group acted like they were waiting for us to walk past them. Quote, "They made us nervous, so we walked as fast as we could," unquote. Lieutenant Kezar stated that he believed that the killer lived nearby and was a local to the area, and must have had knowledge of where the small cave was located. A resident of Grants Pass, Oregon, who had participated in searching for the lost family, had stated to the police that he had looked in the area of the cave where the bodies were later located, and at that time, he did not see the bodies. Local authorities took this man back to the area and had him take them to the cave's location, which he was easily able to do. This man's name is Dwayne Lee Little, and he was eventually implicated in the murder of the Cowden family members, but was never charged. On November 2nd, 1964, Lee was convicted of raping and murdering a 15-year-old teenager. Little was later paroled from the Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem, Oregon on May 24, 1974, which was 3 months prior to the Cowden family murders. Oregon State Police were able to determine that Lee was in Copper, Oregon around the approximate time that the Cowden family was murdered. To make things even more interesting, Lee's girlfriend later stated that she had seen Lee with a .22 caliber gun during Christmas of 1974. Lee's girlfriend later informed the police of the gun, and Lee was once again arrested. Lee was then paroled again on April 26, 1977, and on June 2, 1980, Lee picked up a 23-year-old pregnant woman whose car had broken down on the side of the road near Portland, Oregon. Lee sexually assaulted and violently beat the woman, but somehow she survived Lee's attack. Lee was later charged and convicted of the rape and attempted homicide and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. Lees continued to state that he is innocent of the murders, and he continues to refuse any mental health help that authorities offer him. Police believe that the 2 men and the woman that were spotted in the campground where the Cowden family disappeared was in fact Lee and his mother and father. The truck that the 3 people were parked in matched Lee's parents' truck. However, Lee's parents continued to refuse any knowledge of the Cowden's murders. A local miner later told police that Lee and his parents had stopped at his cabin and signed the guest book that he kept outside. The miner's cabin was located near the campground. An inmate that shared a cell with Lee later confessed to police that Lee had admitted to murdering the Cowden family members. Richard Cowden's father unfortunately committed suicide a few months after the family's bodies were located. After all these years, the Cowden family murders haunt the people living near that area, and while foul play is a certainty, many still wonder if Lee was truly the culprit, or if someone else committed those awful crimes and got away with it. My opinion of this horrific case is that I think that there is quite a bit of evidence to say that Lee was the murderer. The fact that the family from California saw him and his parents in a truck at the same campground as the Cowdens, and the fact that the police know that Lee himself was in that area at that time tells me that he is the most likely suspect. Also, he had a history of being violent and aggressive towards women, and he owned the same exact gun that was used in the murders. Tells me that he was the type of person to commit a crime like the Cowden murders. It makes me sad to know that the Cowden family never received justice and that the murder got away with this horrible crime. Well guys, that's it for this video. I know that this was a very troubling story, and I know that it was pretty difficult to hear about how the Cowden family members suffered at the hands of a monster, but at least we can appreciate the fact that if we talk about horrific events like this and bring them out into the open, maybe someday the guilty people will be found and justice can finally be served. I will go ahead and link all the articles that I got from my information from about the Cowden family members' murder in the information section below. Thanks a lot for watching my video. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next week.